Hi guys, today I'm going to talk about a question that's come up a lot. Are all narcissists addicts? And the answer is absolutely yes. And before you, jump to conclusions, just know that when I say addicts, I don't mean that all narcissists are addicted to alcohol, drugs, sex, and gambling, porn, that sort of thing. Many, or I would even probably argue that most, do have a comorbidity of a process or substance addiction. Porn addiction is very, very common with narcissists, but in and of itself, narcissists have an addiction to supply, and even if they have no other comorbid addiction. So yes, they are all addicts. They are addicted to supply. You can consider it, it's called H.G. Tudor, who is a sort of a self-aware narcissist or self-proclaimed narcissist. He talks about, he calls it fuel. And he is addicted to that fuel, which is approval, validation, external validation. They are addicted to it. So they require narcissistic supply or fuel, and typically they must get this fuel from multiple sources, because no human being could possibly give them enough supply, because they have an insatiable need. It's like a hole in their soul, and it has to be fed by external validation, right? So they're getting this usually from multiple sources. They can have like a primary source of supply, which can be like their significant other that they're in an intimate relationship with, but typically they also have secondary sources, and those can be, they're often sexual as well, and then they can have sort of the tertiary sources of people just thinking they're so great. And so again, this is all a form of supply. So yes, they are addicted. All narcissists are addicted to external validation, supply, or fuel. Many addicts that are strictly addicts and not narcissists, they can appear to be very narcissistic when they are in their addiction, because they engage in like very self-centered behaviors. They're entitled, they're delusional, they're in denial. But when they get clean or sober, you may see, if they're not narcissists to begin with, you may see that they actually, their heart cracks open and they actually become, they don't have that same narcissism. They don't have that same addiction to supply or approval. So it can be quite easy to mistake the two for each other. But with narcissists, they're addicted to supply. So yes, the answer is all narcissists are addicts. It's just, it can be confusing because it's an invisible, it's not, it's very obvious when somebody's addicted. It can be obvious when somebody's addicted to alcohol because they're drinking and they can't stop and they're drinking multiple alcoholic beverages. But with narcissism, it's invisible, that you can't, it's not obvious like what it is that they're like addicted to, because what they're, it can be with more overt narcissists, it can become more obvious, especially lower level. The higher level sort of covert narcissists that are sort of on the maybe sociopathic border, those high level narcissists, they know what they are, they know what they need, and they know that they are addicted to these multiple sources of external validation to fill their dark hole, their insatiable need to be admired and to be liked. And again, they're not interested, these narcissists in general, they're not interested in the currency of love, because the currency of real love requires trust, and they can't trust anyone. That deep wound, whatever happened to them in childhood, that like deep wound, they learned that they can't trust anyone. It was betrayed. Their abandonment stuff is just really deep and taught toxic, and they learn that they can't trust anyone, so they don't trust anyone, right? So their frame of looking at the world is one of this, they have no ability to trust another human being. It doesn't matter how trustworthy that person is. It doesn't matter how decent that person is. They cannot trust anyone. So they look at their lens of looking at people is through this lens of they have no trust. And of course, they are so untrustworthy themselves because typically, I mean, these are, pathological liars. So they have, they're not trustworthy. So when you're really, really duplicitous, of course you're not going to trust anyone else because you think everyone's like you, right? So, they have that sort of ideology. And the thing is that, when they're operating in this world, in relationship, like they're not seeking love, because love requires reciprocity, vulnerability. It requires being your authentic self. It requires being able to see sort of shades of gray. It requires empathy and trying to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. It requires, the ability to take responsibility for your actions and for harms that you've caused. It requires you being able to notice that, you're not perfect. None of us are perfect. We're all humans. We all make mistakes. It's okay. Look at our mistakes and be able to address them and try to do better next time, right? So that's all the currency of love: reciprocity, authenticity, honesty, vulnerability. These are not things that a narcissist is able to access. They're not able to be vulnerable. They're not, because they must be perfect. They're not able to be authentic because they don't even know who their true self is. They don't even, their true self is so hidden, they don't even know who it is. It's buried. It's like, some psychologists believe they don't really have a true self. I think everyone has a soul. I think that everyone has the possibility and the chance of sort of redemption. But I believe that because I believe that on top of everything, there's always the spiritual. There's always the spiritual solution. So I know a lot of psychologists will say that narcissists can never recover and there's no hope for them. And they are pretty hopeless in that it's very, very hard to get them to go seek any sort of therapeutic remedy because they don't think that there's anything wrong with them and they can't acknowledge that there's anything wrong, right? So they must be perfect. So they typically won't go get help, right? So it's really hard for them to have any sort of introspection. They don't want to look inside because it's terrifying to them to look inside. If they look inside, they have to face themselves. And that is a monumental task for somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. So, it's a tough thing, but I do believe that there is a spiritual solution. And I believe that, with a lot of therapeutic help, a lot of, perhaps working the 12 steps, I've seen people who are probably NPD or very highly narcissistic, even after they get sober or clean. I've seen them face themselves and do a lot of repair work to that inner child, that wounding, that attachment wound. So I believe I've seen narcissists recover in the context of 12-step recovery and outside help, but as well as a spiritual solution. So I don't think it's easy. I think it's really, really, really hard for narcissists, but I believe there is a possibility of recovery. And there are some self-aware narcissists on the internet and that are speakers, Sam Bacon and H.G. Tudor and others, and they've talked about, I think Sam Bacon actually, with all of his work that he does to help narcissistic abuse survivors, I think that altruism in and of itself is actually helping him to be less of a narcissist. That's just my personal opinion. But anyway, I hope this is helpful for you, and I'm just going to keep putting these out there. Please excuse the poor quality. I usually make these while I'm driving. So hope you're well. Bye-bye.